What's up, college football fans? Sonoy Valente here once again with the Mean Green Show today, joined by Adrian Broadus. Broadus, did I say that last name correctly? We should have
Broadus,
went over
yeah,
that.
you got it, man.
All
Thank you
right, we
so
should have
much.
went over that pre-tape. I don't know what the heck I was thinking, but anyway, Adrian, thank you so much for jumping on. We really appreciate it. And where can everybody find what it is that you do for UTEP?
Yeah, and hey, I appreciate you having me on this show. By the way, one of my very close friends, his name is Valente. So this works real well. I'm with another Valente, and now we're friends since we're on this show. So friend of our show is definitely a friend of your show. So I'm really happy to be on this. You can find us 600ESPNElPaso.com. That's the best way to find us. And then just at my Twitter handle, at Adrian Broadus.
That's awesome. His first name is Valente?
His first name is Valente. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Have you ever met a Valente? Have you ever met somebody named Valente?
I have actually. I've met a Valente. His last name was Rodriguez, and I've met a few other Valentes that are last name of Valentes, but not too terribly common. But there are some of us out there, I guess. But anyway, that's crazy that you have one. We'll have to whatever. But all right. So anyway, I've been listening to you on the Minor Talk and whatnot. And and it's tight. And you shared that pre-tape, but you seriously do lean towards UTEP winning this game. And if you could just kind of give us a quick synopsis as to why, and then, I'll present some questions your way and just kind of let it flow as it will.
Yeah, I think a loaded question, but I guess let's just get into all of it. So UTEP is coming off a 7-6 record last year. They exceeded everybody's expectations. That's the biggest thing about all of this. They exceeded everybody's expectations of where Dana Dimel's tenure was going into year 4 of his helm at UTEP football. And I think that the expectations were, can you finally be competitive? Well, they flipped that. They said, we're not only going to be competitive, but we're going to win 7 games and go to a bowl game, which is, I think it exceeded a lot of fans, expectations going into it. But when you exceed expectations, then you go through a whole offseason and a whole fall camp of higher expectations than last year. So UTEP has won, had winning seasons in back-to-back years. You have to look all the way back to 2004 and 2005 when previous head coach Mike Price was in at UTEP. It's a long time since UTEP has sustained any level of winning. And I don't even know if you could call a 6-6 or 7-6 record winning, but to UTEP standards, it is, because this program had been the dormant program of all of Conference USA. It was the laughing stock of Conference USA. But let's be honest, for the better part of the last decade. And they had a winless season back in 2017. They endured 2 back-to-back 1-win seasons under Dana Dimel, and it all culminated to a season where they exceeded everybody's expectations. So that brings us to 2022, where we are right now. They have a lot of starters coming back on both sides of the ball. And you look at this team from top down, this team on paper should be a contender in Conference USA. Now, will they rise to that occasion? That's another question around this team. But if you look at what they have offensively in quarterback Gavin Hardison, and you look at their front 6 and what they have up front on their defensive line, which is arguably one of the best in Conference USA, I just feel like this is a team right here in UTEP that can reach that bowl threshold that they really want. And UTEP hasn't won a bowl game since 1967. It's been a long time. I mean, it's really been a long time. So I'm looking at this in more of they have high expectations. And when it starts in that North Texas game, you're about to sell out the Sun Bowl. You're hyping this game up by all measures. You haven't beat Seth Littrell in 5 straight matchups. This is the time for UTEP to finally beat North Texas and get a win under their belt. Now, that comes with a lot, right? Because if you look on the other end with the Mean Green, they have a lot of dogs on their team. They have a lot of guys like Austin Ani who have high expectations for their own group. It's not, forget a bowl appearance. They know what it means to go to bowl games year after year. But this time around, they want to win one. And I like the mentality that Seth Littrell has with this group. And I think that they're going to have a lot of success. This is going to be a dogfight, man. This is going to be one of those games that's just going to go back and forth all the way through. And it's a toss-up. So I pretty much flipped the coin, and I just landed with UTEP on this one.
Yeah, likewise, man. I've kind of talked myself into UNT winning as well as talked myself out of that as since you even just been talking, I mean, no exaggeration. I really am back and forth. But one thing to consider is, well, for me anyway, is like I feel like UTEP got a lot of gimme wins early on, which gave them that momentum. The schedule was pretty favorable, but then they play Fresno State, who was a 10-win team, in the bowl game, and lose by a touchdown and or a touchdown and extra point, whatever, 7-point, loss, and that's what kind of concerns me. So what do you think UTEP is going to have to do in order to come away with a win? And, what would North Texas have to do to come away with this win?
Yeah, great question. So on UTEP's side, the first thing is, of course, time of possession. That's Dana Dimel's strength. He loves to control the clock, control time of possession. So if UTEP wins, the recipe for it will be, they have to control the ball on offense. They have to try to put up points. That was kind of a struggle in the latter part of last season. Is they had a tough time scoring the ball, especially in the second half of games. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. But if UTEP goes up early in this one, like 14-0 or 14-3, 14-7, anything like that, UTEP tends to get a little excited that they're up early. So I'm looking for UTEP to kind of hold that lead if they get a lead, if that makes any sense. And then on North Texas' side, start fast, shock UTEP. Look at that UTSA game last year that was so highly regarded between the Miners and the Roadrunners, and that game was a dud. I mean, UTSA came in a ranked team, and they were ready to fend off the UTEP crowd, who came out. I think it was 30,000 plus at that game, and it was a huge crowd. It was all this hype, all this excitement for nothing. UTSA came in, they punched UTEP in the mouth, and they never looked back. And the UTEP tried to claw their way back in at times, make it look a little respectable. They weren't in that game. Let's be honest. And if North Texas wants to do the same to UTEP, I wouldn't be surprised if this game is on North Texas' side, 17-0 by the first half or first quarter. I wouldn't be surprised. This game could go in so many directions. That's what makes it so exciting to me. But if North Texas wins, I think they beat them handily.
Well, it really could. I mean, it could be a blowout either way. It could be a close game. I mean, it's just who really knows. One thing that makes me optimistic about North Texas's chance, though, is if you look at last year's game between the Miners and the Mean Green, that Jacob Cowing, right? Is that the correct pronunciation on his name? So he put up, he pretty much was kind of like a Jalen Darden for us. I mean, 174 yards receiving with a touchdown. And that you lose that production, and I know you're returning a Watt as well as who's the other one? Dennison, the running back.
Are you talking about Hankins? Deion Hankins? Yeah.
Yes, Hankins. I know you're returning both of those, but do you feel like there's a receiver that's going to be able to step up and maybe not be the Cowing of last year, but kind of somewhat take on the load of being that receiver, like Gavin's go-to receiver?
Yeah, another good question. Now, Tyron Smith is the easy answer because he's the guy from last year. He was the third wide receiver behind both Justin Garrett and Jacob Cowing. So he's the easy answer right there. And I think he will be that standout guy. I don't think you can overlook him. The same way I don't think you can overlook Kelly Arcari, who's going to be a newcomer for the Miners. And then along with Jeremiah Ballard, a rising newcomer, they've got Ray Flores as a wide receiver, Justine Clark. They got some, a lot more depth this year, and I think that's going to help them out in different situations. And UTEP, it's interesting. They like to throw downfield, so they're gonna air it out a lot of different times, and maybe it's going to be that kind of 50-50 ball. And if it's a 50-50 ball around Kelly Arcari's hands, I would, I'd trust him to snag some of those passes. And I think that he's going to be one of those guys who can really help out when it comes to those big situations. Now, when you're talking about a real interesting wide receiver group like this Miners team has, the Miners have to understand that they can't discredit the run game. Like you mentioned with Awad and Hankins, that dynamic duo running group, they can control the whole game if you really want. I mean, UTEP, it's kind of weird because some games they'll favor the run big time. They'll run 70% of the time and they won't look back. And then other times they'll like to air it out and they'll pass it 60% of the time. So it's going to be an interesting way to interesting kind of dynamic to see how Dana Dimel calls this game from a play caller perspective and sees what we can really see from this UTEP offense.
How big of a factor do you think praise, and correct me if I'm saying the last name wrong, but Amahule, is that how you say his last name?
Amehule, yeah, but he's going to be a great guy. I mean, he's like KD Davis is to North Texas, right? Like he is like an impact player, and I think he deserves all the preseason accolades. I think he is, he's the highly touted guy on this team. If you want to look at a quote unquote NFL caliber player on this roster, you might look at praise. I would say this though, like this year, he's not taking it for granted. We've talked to him on the record, and he hasn't taken all this offseason and all the accolades and stuff for granted. But now it's about this defensive line to really show what they can do. They've got question marks when it comes to their linebacker group, just based on their depth and knowing whether or not they'll have their standout from last year, Breon Hayward, eligible by kickoff on Saturday. Which, hey, I mean, clock is ticking, right? And you look on the other side with the secondary, it's an inexperienced group. It's a lot of guys who you're bringing in for the first time ever. But that's kind of the mantra of UTEP football and Dana Dimel is they like to bring in these junior college guys who can be immediate impact players or guys who can play immediately for them. So I think that's the biggest thing to know with all of that.
Man, and one thing that really, I mean, we both know it is, you covering the team, me being a North Texas fan, is how important this game is for both programs. I mean, you guys have OU right afterwards. We have SMU. So let's be realistic. Both teams are probably going to get a loss in week 2 or week 1, right? Playing week 0. So, I mean, starting off 1-0, then unfortunately probably 1-1 is a lot better than 0-2 though. 0-2 is, you've dug yourself into quite the hole, and now you've got to kind of try to, chip your way out. So, I mean, there's really a lot on the line for both teams. But real quick, Adrian, before you go, I mean, if you're able to, can I get a score prediction from you?
All right, I'm gonna go 20-17 UTEP.
Oh man, I'm gonna go
very close.
I'm gonna go 24. I'm gonna go 24-17 UNT.
It's a good pick.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. Like
a coin, right? Let's see.
It really is. It really
is.
Yeah. Well, Adrian, thank you so much for jumping on. I'll let you go. I know we're on different time zones here in the same state, which is weird, but yeah. But once again, thank you so much, and good luck with your coverage this season.
Hey, thank you so much for inviting me. Great stuff as always, and really appreciate you having me.
All right. Thank you.